Pardons for violent criminals, but no mercy for immigrant families. The hypocrisy of American justice introduction. The United States stands at a crossroads of justice, where violent offenders receive clemency, while immigrant families who have contributed to the country for decades are met with deportation and separation. The stark contrast between the pardons granted to January 6 rioters and the ongoing criminalization of undocumented immigrants reveals a troubling inconsistency in American values. This report examines the economic, societal, and moral implications of these policies, highlighting the urgent need for equitable justice and reform. Selective mercy. Pardons for January 6 rioters in January 2025. Over 1,600 individuals involved in the January 6 Capitol riots received presidential pardons, including more than 600 charged with assaulting police officers. Among those granted clemency were Enrique Tarrio and Stuart Rhodes, leaders of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, convicted of seditious conspiracy, dozens of violent offenders who attacked law enforcement and disrupted democratic processes. These actions were justified as a belief in redemption and second chances. Yet, this compassion is glaringly absent for immigrant families who cross borders in pursuit of safety, opportunity, and a better future. The cost of hate. Deportation versus amnesty. The financial burden of deportation, deporting all undocumented immigrants in the United States, would cost an estimated $850 billion, including billions spent on apprehension, detention, and legal processing. Economic losses from removing workers, consumers, and taxpayers who sustain industries like agriculture, construction, and healthcare. The economic case for amnesty, in contrast, granting amnesty could generate $1.5 trillion in economic benefits over a decade by adding $1 trillion in GDP growth through increased productivity, generating $500 billion in new tax revenues as immigrants gain legal status, stimulating job creation and consumer spending in local economies. The financial argument is clear. Compassion and inclusion lead to prosperity, while deportation imposes a heavy economic burden. The lockup economy. Who profits? The U.S. justice system incarcerates 2.3 million people, making it the highest incarceration rate in the world. This system disproportionately affects low-income individuals and immigrants, serving as a profit engine for private prisons. Companies like CoreCivic and Geo Group profit from billions in government contracts. Corporate interests, exploiting low-wage prison labor while lobbying for tougher immigration and sentencing laws. This system perpetuates inequality, prioritizing profits over people. Meanwhile, elites who benefit from these structures, whether through political influence or economic gain, face little to no accountability. A broken system of selective justice. The pardons for January 6 rioters contrasts sharply with the treatment of immigrant families, who face legal barriers and deportation despite their contributions to society. This hypocrisy raises questions about the moral inconsistency of a system that pardons violent offenders while punishing peaceful immigrants, the political motivations behind clemency for insurrectionists versus the lack of action on immigration reform. Leaders from both political parties have failed to address these issues. Policies like the American Families United Act, which would provide a pathway to legal residency for mixed-status families, remain stalled in Congress. The moral and economic imperative for reform of second chances are justified for violent criminals. They must also be extended to immigrant families. Reform is not just a matter of economic necessity, but of moral responsibility. Amnesty upholds family unity. Mixed-status families deserve stability and security, not the fear of separation. Compassion strengthens communities. Immigrant contributions are integral to the nation's economic and cultural fabric. Justice must be equitable. A nation cannot claim to uphold liberty while selectively applying mercy. Conclusion: a call for justice. The American justice system must reconcile its contradictions. Pardoning violent offenders while punishing immigrant families exposes deep flaws in the nation's approach to justice and equality. Leaders must prioritize comprehensive immigration reform, including pathways to citizenship for undocumented families, policies that reduce incarceration and exploitation, focusing instead on restorative justice. America's promise of opportunity and fairness should extend to all, not just a privileged few. The time for change is now. Justice cannot wait.